The people winning aren't smarter than you. I need you to hear that and actually believe it. Not as a feel-good line, not as something to make you feel better about where you are, as a fact that changes how you see everything if you let it land the right way. The person you look up to, the one with the results you want, the life you're working toward, the thing you keep telling yourself you're going to build, they're not operating on a different level of intelligence than you. They don't have access to information you don't have. They weren't born with something you're missing. They are not fundamentally different from you in any way that actually matters. The only real difference between them and where you are right now is that they didn't quit when it got hard. And it got hard. It always gets hard. For everyone. Without exception. The difference is just what people do when it does. Here's what I want you to understand about the people who look like they have it figured out. They failed. A lot. More than you know. More than they probably talk about. The version of them you're seeing right now is not the starting point. It's not even close to the starting point. What you're seeing is the result of countless attempts that didn't work, decisions that were wrong, money that was lost, time that was wasted, and moments where quitting would have been the easier and more reasonable choice. But they didn't quit. Not because they were tougher than you by nature. Not because they had some special reservoir of resilience that you don't have access to. They didn't quit because they wanted the thing on the other side badly enough to keep going through the part that wasn't working yet. That's it. That's the whole formula. Want it bad enough. Keep going. That's what separates the people who get there from the people who don't. Not intelligence. Not talent. Not luck. At least not primarily. Just the decision to stay in the game long enough for the work to compound into something real. Let's talk about what quitting actually looks like. Because most people think quitting is a dramatic moment. A decision made in a single instant. I give up. I'm done. That's not how it usually works. Quitting is almost always slow. It looks like taking a break that turns into a week. It looks like telling yourself you'll get back to it when things slow down and then watching things never slow down. It looks like checking the numbers one too many times and letting a slow day talk you out of what took months to build. It looks like finding a reason that sounds legitimate enough to justify stopping. I need to regroup. I need a new strategy. I need to wait for better timing. Those aren't reasons. They're exits with good branding. And the thing about slow quitting is that it doesn't feel like quitting while it's happening. It feels like being smart, like being strategic, like taking care of yourself. And then one day you look up and realize that the thing you were building has been sitting untouched for 6 months, and the gap between where you are and where you wanted to be feels bigger than it did when you started. That's slow quitting. And it's far more common than the dramatic version. And far more dangerous because it never announces itself. I want to talk about the moment most people quit. Because I think if you can recognize it, you can survive it. The moment most people quit is not at the beginning when things are hard and uncertain. That part is actually easier to push through because the excitement of starting is still fresh. It's not at the peak either, obviously, because at the peak things are working and nobody quits when things are working. The moment most people quit is in the middle. Specifically, the part of the middle where the initial excitement has completely worn off and the results haven't fully arrived yet. Where you've put in enough work to know exactly how hard this is, but not enough work yet to see the full return on that investment. Where the gap between where you are and where you want to be feels the widest it's ever felt. That moment has a name in some circles. The dip, the valley, the messy middle, whatever you call it. It's the stretch of time between starting something and it working, and almost everyone hits it, and almost everyone mistakes it for a sign that what they're building isn't going to work. But here's what you need to know about that moment. The dip is not a signal to stop. It's a signal that you're close. Because the dip is exactly where most people quit. Which means the people who make it through the dip are competing against a much smaller group. The field thins out dramatically in the dip. And the people on the other side of it, the ones you look up to, the ones with the results you want, they got there by surviving something that most people walked away from. You surviving the dip is literally how you get to the other side of it. Now I want to be honest with you about something because I think it's important. Not everything that isn't working is worth pushing through. Not every failed attempt is a sign to keep going in the exact same direction. There's a difference between quitting and pivoting. And knowing the difference is one of the most valuable things you can figure out. Quitting is walking away from the goal because it got hard. Pivoting is adjusting your approach because the evidence is telling you that a different path will get you to the same place more effectively. Quitting is giving up on the destination. Pivoting is changing the route. The question you have to ask yourself when something isn't working is, am I stopping because this is genuinely not the right approach? Or am I stopping because it's uncomfortable and the discomfort found a way to sound like wisdom in my head? Because discomfort is extremely good at sounding like wisdom. It's extremely good at disguising itself as logic, as maturity, as knowing when to walk away. And sometimes it is those things. But a lot of the time, it's just fear with a better vocabulary. Sit with that question honestly. And if the honest answer is that the approach needs to change it. Adjust. Try something different. But keep the destination. Because the destination is the whole point. Let's talk about talent for a minute. Because I think talent is one of the most overrated things in the conversation about success. And it might be holding you back in ways you haven't considered. Most people look at someone who is good at something and assume talent is the explanation. He's just naturally good at that. She was born with that gift. And sometimes that's true. But most of the time, what looks like talent from the outside is just accumulated time. It's the result of someone who started earlier, practiced longer, failed more times, and refined their approach over a span of time that isn't visible in the finished product. The danger of believing in talent as the primary factor is that it gives you an exit. It gives you a reason why the gap between you and them is fixed, unchangeable, not your fault and not within your control, which means you don't have to keep trying, which means the discomfort of the dip has a ready-made justification. But what if it's not talent? What if the only real difference is time and refusal to quit? What if the person you're comparing yourself to is where they're simply because they stayed in the game longer than most people do? And the gap between you and them is not fixed. It's just time, and time is the one thing that keeps moving regardless of what you decide to do with it. Here is something I want to leave you with before we get to the end. Think about the version of you that quit. Not hypothetically. Actually think about a time you stopped pursuing something that mattered to you. A goal you dropped. A version of yourself you were building toward that you let go of at some point. Now think about what would have happened if you hadn't. Not guaranteed success. Just, what if you kept going? What would have been different? What would you know now that you don't know? Who would you have become in the process of staying in it? I'm not asking so you can feel bad about it. I'm asking because that version of the future is still available to you for the things you haven't quit yet. And maybe even for some of the things you thought you already quit on. It's not too late to go back. It's not too late to pick something back up that you put down. It's not too late to become the version of yourself that stayed. The only version of too late that actually exists is the one where you decide you're done and never revisit it. Every other version is still possible. The people winning aren't smarter than you. They aren't more talented. They aren't more deserving. They didn't get a better set of starting conditions in every case. They just didn't quit when you might have. They just stayed in the game through the part that wasn't working yet. They just made it through the dip where most people exit, and that is completely available to you. Not as a motivational idea, as an actual choice you can make. Today, about the thing you're building, about the goal you're still carrying, about the version of yourself you keep saying you're going to become. The only question is whether you're going to stay in the game long enough to find out what happens when the work finally compounds into something you can see. God didn't put the vision in you without putting the capacity to reach it in you too. The gifts are already there. The path is already being prepared. What's required from you is the one thing that has always separated the people who get there from the people who don't. Just don't quit. Sit with that.